Here is the number that settles it. On $80,000, sacrificing just $10,000 into super in 21 to 26 at 27 leaves you roughly $1,500 richer after tax every single year, according to ATO and First Super guidance. That is because the money is taxed at 15% inside super instead of around 30% at your marginal rate. The 2026 tax cut narrowed that gap at the bottom, so the real question is whether salary sacrifice still beats simply taking the cash. Stick around, because for most workers the answer is not what the headlines suggest. This is not a rounding error. The 2026 to 27 concessional contributions cap is $30,500, including employer super guarantee and salary sacrifice, per First Super and the ATO, which defines the maximum low-tax zone you can fill each year. A mid-career earner on $80,000 uses only about 29.5% of that cap through the 12% super guarantee, leaving around $22,900 of unused space annually. According to ATO figures, leaving that space empty can cost roughly $1,500 in avoidable tax per $10,000 for 2 decades, which is $30,000 in tax alone before any compounding. That is why picking the wrong option here quietly costs real money. Here is the at-a-glance version. Salary sacrifice routes pre-tax pay into super, where the ATO taxes it at a flat 15% as a concessional contribution, and future earnings inside super are taxed at just 15% too. Taking the cash means the same dollars are taxed at your marginal rate, which for anyone above $45,000 is around 30% or more per ATO tax tables, and any earnings outside super are taxed at 30 to 45%. The trade-off is access. Cash is available now. Super is locked until preservation age. Let us break down who each option actually suits. Salary sacrifice suits the middle income and higher income worker who does not need every dollar in hand today. The ATO confirms concessional contributions to a complying fund are taxed at 15%, generally well below your marginal rate. First Super notes this really bites once you earn above $45,000, where your marginal rate including Medicare sits around 30% or more, so you are trading roughly 30 cents of tax for 15 cents. The catch is preservation. Those dollars are locked away for the long haul, which is exactly why it works best for retirement money you are not going to spend anyway. The core advantage is simple arithmetic that repeats every year. On $80,000, an extra $10,000 taken as salary is taxed at around 30% or more, so about $3,000 disappears and roughly $7,000 lands in your hand, per First Super figures. Sacrifice the same $10,000 and only $1,500 is taxed at 15%, leaving $8,500 working inside super. That is an annual tax saving of about $1,500, and a worked example from WealthLab on $120,000 shows about $204 saved per $1,000 sacrificed, or $2,400 per $10,000. Despite the 2026 cut, middle and higher earners still save roughly 15 to 20 cents per dollar. Salary sacrifice is not unlimited or universal. The concessional cap is $32,500 in 2026 and 27, covering employer super guarantee, salary sacrifice, and personal deductible contributions, per First Super and Australian Super, and breaching it triggers extra tax. Australian Super also flags Division 293. Once your income plus before tax contributions passes $250,000, an additional 15% applies, pushing the effective rate to 30%. At that level, the discount versus a 30% marginal rate largely vanishes, though it may still beat marginal rates near 45%. So the strategy shines below the threshold and fades above it. Taking the cash is the right call for a narrower group than people assume. It suits those who genuinely need the money now, are paying down high-interest debt, or earn low enough that their marginal rate sits near the 15% super rate. From 1st July 2026, the lowest personal rate falls from 16% to 15% for incomes between $18,200 and $45,000. Per the Combank changes, so at the very bottom, the advantage of sacrificing is tiny, but for most full-time workers earning well above that, the cash option means handing more to the ATO than you need to. The genuine strength of taking the cash is liquidity and control. Super is preserved and cannot be touched until you reach preservation age, whereas cash can clear a mortgage deposit, wipe a credit card, or cover an emergency the moment you need it. For someone with expensive debt, the guaranteed saving from clearing it can outrank a 15-cent tax discount locked away for decades. That said, if you simply invest the leftover cash, the ATO taxes those earnings at your marginal 30 to 45% rather than the 15% inside super, so the flexibility comes at an ongoing cost. The hidden cost of the cash option is everything you never see. On $80,000, that $22,900 of unused concessional space, if left empty, forgoes about $1,500 in tax savings per $10,000 every year per ATO and first super figures. Over 20 years, that is $30,000 in tax you did not need to pay, plus $8,500 a year that never entered a 15% earnings environment. Even on simple arithmetic, that is $170,000 of contributions not made, with the earnings gap compounding on top. The cash felt good today, but the long-run bill is brutal. Let us score the first 4 criteria directly. On the tax applied to the contribution, salary sacrifice wins with a flat 15% versus around 30% or more marginal per the ATO. On earnings, super again wins at 15% against 30 to 45% outside. Cash takes the round on access, since super is locked until preservation age while cash is available immediately. And on using your $32,500 concessional cap, salary sacrifice wins by actually filling that low tax zone. That is 3 rounds to 1 so far, but flexibility matters more to some than others. Now the remaining criteria. For high earners above $250,000, Division 293 lifts the effective rate to 30% per Australian super, so salary sacrifice loses much of its edge and it is closer to a tie. For incomes under $45,000, the 2026 cut to 15% narrows the gap so much it is roughly line ball. But on long-run wealth for a middle earner, it is not close. Our persona on $90,000 sacrificing $12,000 a year saves about $1,800 annually, which is around 41 400 Waltwas over 23 years per ATO and first super sums. Before I get to the number that decides it, here's the scorecard. Tallying the rounds. Salary sacrifice clearly wins the fees and tax criteria, the earnings treatment, cap efficiency, and long-run wealth for the typical worker. Taking the cash wins on flexibility and ties at the 2 income extremes, above $250,000 and below $45,000. So across 7 criteria, salary sacrifice takes the majority for most middle-income earners, while cash wins only where you genuinely need liquidity now. Next is the single number that tips the decision for nearly everyone in between. Here's the number that decides it for most people. If your marginal rate is 30% or higher and you are below the $250,000 Division 293 threshold, salary sacrifice delivers a tax saving of at least 15 cents per dollar contributed per ATO and Australian super guidance. For a worker above $45,000, that gap between roughly 30% marginal and 15% super tax is real money every single year. If this is useful, subscribe. There is a breakdown like this every week. So who wins? For our persona Sarah on $90,000, sacrificing $12,000 keeps her total before tax contributions at $112,800, well under the $250,000 Division 293 line, so she banks about $1,800 in tax saved every year, roughly $4,400 over 23 years per ATO and first super figures. For that middle band, the better fit is clearly salary sacrifice, but if you earn under $45,000, the 2026 cut to 15% makes the benefit marginal, and if you're over $250,000, Division 293 halves the edge. If you need the cash for high-interest debt or an emergency, flexibility can win. This is general information, not personal advice. Check your fund's PDS and your own circumstances and confirm your figures with the ATO before you set anything up. Here is the clean rule. Choose salary sacrifice if your income sits between $45,000 and $250,000. Your marginal rate is 30% or more per the ATO tax tables, and you have unused concessional cap space under the $32,500 limit that you can comfortably afford to lock away. Choose the cash if you have expensive debt to clear, need liquidity for an emergency or a home deposit, or earn close to $45,000, where the 20 and 26 cut to 15% shrinks the advantage to almost nothing. and never sacrifice past the $32,500 cap because a breach triggers extra tax that eats your saving. To lock this in, check your year-to-date employer contributions in MyGov, subtract them from the $32,500 cap, and email payroll a fixed dollar amount per pay so your written agreement is in place before you earn that salary. Next, I'm covering Division 293 in detail. Exactly how the $250,000 threshold is calculated and how to avoid it accidentally wiping your tax saving. Subscribe so you don't miss it.